Okay, so I'm just gonna turn on the camera and I'm gonna talk. If you've been following this channel for however long, you've been here months, years, weeks, whatever, you might have seen that there's been a slowdown of content coming through here. Making a lot less long form videos. And there's a few reasons for that. First, while I still love VR very, very much, I'm not in love with the direction that the industry is generally going right now. Between companies like Sony and Meta spending less and less money in active VR game development, we do have Deadpool coming on later this year, but Meta's clearly pivoted more towards like wearables, smart glasses, AI, and things like that. And Sony's general investment in PSVR 2 has been not what people would have hoped for. I'll say it like that. And we're still waiting on Valve, who's done exactly two things in VR in the last 5 years, Half-Life Alyx and the Valve Index. We're still waiting on Decker, which I don't even think that's going to be some massive game changer for the ecosystem because it's going to be expensive and it's PC specific. So couple that with the general slowdown that happens in gaming in general in the summer months and like the late spring months where there's not a lot of news to go around. We're not getting a major new headset, which we've gotten pretty much every year for the last few years now. Between PSVR 1, Valve Index, Quest 1, Quest 2, Quest 3, Quest Pro, the PSVR 2, the Pico 4 launch, there's been new hardware to get interested in, and that has generated a lot of interest. And then you get bigger games on top of that. Like last year was insane with Batman and Metro and Behemoth. Right now we're in a bit of a slow period, and the stuff that you'll see my fellow VR influencers hype as this is a game changer and this is something that's going to change VR forever, or VR is here's some good, or here's some good news for VR. VR is looking up, all this other stuff. To me, that's just clickbait because really it's not super interesting right now. And I don't want to cover something that I'm not super passionate about. So I just don't make videos. If there's a piece of news that I do want to comment on, but I've only got, like 60 seconds or so of commentary, I'd rather just make it short. I'd rather just turn the camera on, give my take in about 30 to 60 seconds. And then that goes on the YouTube Shorts feed on the same channel, on TikTok and on Instagram. And I'm going to continue to do that because I hate videos where it seems like they've made their point 30 seconds in, but they just keep rambling on and on and on for 5 minutes because you get more ad revenue on long form videos than you do on short form videos. I've never wanted to be that person. I've never wanted to be the person that clickbaits you with clickbaity thumbnails and titles, and this is what you need to use your headset for. And you're doing VR gaming wrong if you're not doing this. This is one of the most important games of the year. Like, I never wanted to be that. So that's the first part of it. I'm not super passionate about what's happening in the VR ecosystem right now. And thus I don't make videos like this where I just sit down and talk about it because frankly, it's just not super interesting to me. Now, I'm not going to be one of these curmudgeon like early 2010s VR creators who's like, oh, get off my lawn. VR is nothing but kids. I'm not that guy. Like, there's a place for everything. And the more VR expands its variety and its horizons, the more people you can get into headset. And that's a good thing. If we're cultivating a new generation of VR gamers who are going to grow up with this technology, and yeah, they might like Animal Company now, but they might grow up to like, more mature themed games and things like that. Just like if you're of a certain age, if you're a millennial or if you're Gen X, video gaming pretty much grew up with you. So as you matured, the games matured. And I think there's going to be a whole new cycle, generation of gamers coming up that are going to be so used to VR, and VR is going to mature with that. And then the second part of why content slowed down here is because I spent the better part of a year now. It's July, so yeah, about 9 months or so, relearning how to code. I went to college for computer science, but that was well over 20 years ago. And after almost 2 decades spent in the restaurant industry, pretty much everything that I learned in school is like gone now. I understand the basics of programming, but I don't really understand all the intricacies of it. The reason I'm doing that is because I've decided that I want to make my own VR games, plural. So what type of game do I want to make? My favorite video game series ever is The Legend of Zelda, followed by Metroid, and then the Metal Gear Solid series. But after you get past those 3 franchises, I'd say 90 to 95% of the single player games I played as a kid were JRPGs. Games like Dragon Warrior, well, now it's Dragon Quest here in North America, the early Final Fantasy games before Square turned away from turn-based combat. Yeah, I'm not gonna comment on that. And even now with like the Persona series and Metaphor and Clair Obscura Expedition 33, Baldur's Gate 3, turn-based games are games that I have always and will always love. Now there are turn-based games in VR. Demio is one of my favorite VR games ever. I have played hundreds and hundreds of hours of that game. Triangle Strategy dropped on Quest from Square last year. I'm pretty sure I'm like the only person who ever actually completed that game. You have Augmented Empire from CodeSync. There's a full review of that game on my YouTube channel. I'll link to that down below. And the very, very excellent Arcaxer, a game that I think a lot more people should play because it's really well done. And I think 2 people made that game. So in short, while there have been several games that have kind of like hit certain segments of the JRPG genre, I don't think there's been a game that's brought it all together. I'm going to try to build that on my own. Now, I'm not stupid. I'm very well aware of the fact that number one, the odds are stacked against me with like the state of VR game sales, especially paid single player games. I get all that. But because it's something I'm passionate about VR, and I'm passionate about JRPGs, I'm going to take an attempt to make one. So what does that mean for the future, both for me and for this channel? I'm still going to cover games and hardware that I'm interested in. I've actually got something coming in the mail that I'm super excited about. I did another interview with the Polyart Games team about Glass Breakers. That was actually last month. I just haven't had time because life has been lifing lately. But that will come out here pretty soon. And I'm still going to feature games that I'm interested in, even if they're not the biggest titles. For instance, the Smurfs game last month, the Smurfs Tower Defense game. I was interested in it because I grew up watching the Smurfs. It's not the biggest title in the world, but I still wanted to feature and put it out there for you guys because I think it probably doesn't get as much attention as like the bigger games. Like right now, that's Deadpool and other big titles that everyone's going to be overly excited about. And on top of that, I'm going to chronicle my developer journey. So right now I'm stuck in coding land. I'm not going to put out a video of me sitting there coding. That's not super interesting. But as I go through the process of like building my meta store page and, you know, trying to get listed on Steam and stuff like that, I'm going to chronicle that and start doing dev blogs and things of that nature so you guys can follow along. So the plan right now is late 2025, early 2026, let's just say like the 6 to 8 month range. I am planning to put something out. The idea of that being that it'll be a model of the turn-based combat that will carry over to the full game. In addition to that, I'll be trying to participate in some game jams, like the channel Fistful of Shrimp has one that starts next month in August. I plan to sign up for that, and that will honestly probably be the first app fully start to finish that I do develop, because everyone in that community has been really encouraging and just kind of pushing me to do it because I'm going to learn a lot. So both still covering VR news, games I'm interested in and things like that, but it's also going to be a history of my journey as a burgeoning VR game developer. I realize the task that's in front of me. I realize where the business is. You know, there's so many layoffs. I've covered them pretty extensively on this channel, which is why I'm making a run at doing this solo, because I'm making a run at something and I'm trying to create something that I am deeply, deeply passionate about. So I hope you follow along on the journey. Let me know down in the comments what you think. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you want to just follow along as I go through this process, and I hope to see you soon.